My husband is the crown prince of Beijing's elite circle. When his white moonlight and I were kidnapped together, he chose her. I dared not voice any reproach, calmly enduring the kidnappers' torture while waiting for the timed bomb strapped to me to detonate. In our previous life, when he received the ransom call, he brought a full 100 million yuan, but the kidnapper was a deranged serial killer who forced him to choose only one of us. Because I was 5 months pregnant, he painfully chose me. Rory Sue was brutally tortured to death. When the police found her, she was already unrecognizable. Afterwards, he was filled with remorse and blamed all the mistakes on me. If it weren't for you carrying the Song family's child, and our parents threatening to kill themselves if I didn't save you, Rory Sue wouldn't have died. He beat and cursed me every day, causing me not only to miscarry but also to live the rest of my life with a colostomy bag, a fate worse than death. My husband took me to the river where Rory Sue's remains were found and pushed me in, drowning me alive. In this life, I chose to stay as the kidnapper's human toy, letting him be with Rory Sue. The kidnapper tied me and Rory Sue to chairs, then pulled out a sharp knife. The blade lightly grazed my face as he roared in fury. Your billionaire husband ruined me, bankrupted me, destroyed my family. If it weren't for him, I wouldn't be hunted by debt collectors today. When he arrives, only one of you two will live. In a fit of rage, he slapped both me and Rory Sue, leaving our faces swollen and red. Gray hurried over, never expecting the kidnappers had also taken Rory Sue. Seeing the injuries on her face, his heart ached terribly. Rory Sue was crying pitifully. Brother Gray, save me. The kidnappers had planted timed bombs on both of us with a 120-second countdown, leaving Gray very little time to think. On the phone, the elderly couple from the Song family threatened to take their own lives, forcing him to prioritize saving me and our unborn child. Song Julie was the crown prince of Beijing's elite circle, and the one thing he never lacked was money. His eyes filled with contempt as he said, I can't understand resorting to kidnapping for a mere 100 million, but I want both. I'll add another 500 million, enough to cover your debts. Despite his wealth, he underestimated the brutality of the kidnappers. The kidnapper was driven to bankruptcy by him, which triggered multiple personalities. When he goes mad, he becomes utterly inhuman and can't be bribed with money at all. President Song, you have 60 seconds left. Any more delays, and we'll be collecting 2 corpses. Gray Song looked at Rory Sue with difficulty, then turned to me with displeasure. Was this kidnapping deliberately set up by you just to make Rory jealous? On the phone, only my parents truly cared about me. They cried and threatened to die unless Gray Song brought me back, or else they would donate all their inheritance to the state. The kidnapper deliberately mocked and teased me. I've got another accomplice now. After this job, we'll split it 50-50. Rory Sue cried and accused me. Aria Lin, I knew you had ill intentions. I don't want to be blown up. Gray, save me. Gray Song glared at me fiercely. Don't think just because you're carrying the Song family's heir, you can do whatever you want. I've known all along that you married into this family for the Song fortune. His and Rory Sue's eyes both reddened as they gazed at each other, yet because of the kidnappers, they couldn't embrace. I never expected to be reborn into such a difficult moment. In my previous life, after I was rescued, Rory Sue was left alone, enduring endless torture and humiliation from the kidnappers, and was eventually locked in a cabinet and thrown into the river. I thought being the one chosen to be saved that day was my survival after a disaster, but it turned out to be the beginning of a nightmare. Afterwards, Gray Song was filled with remorse and blamed me entirely for Rory Sue's death, calling me a jinx. He drank heavily every day, beating and scolding me even more violently, not only causing me to miscarry but also rupturing my intestines, leaving me permanently disabled. The wound on my back was stitched up for a length of 40 to 50 centimeters, leaving an extremely ugly scar, and I have to live with a colostomy bag for the rest of my life. In the end, I still don't know what I did wrong. Clearly, the real culprit is the deranged kidnapper, or perhaps it was Gray Song's arrogance in the shopping mall that provoked enemies. From start to finish, I've never done anything morally wrong, so why does he hate me, since he never loved me? I might as well let them be together. I deliberately lied, saying The child I'm carrying isn't yours, and I don't love you either." Gray Song couldn't believe it. After all, I had been his devoted follower for 10 years, always at his beck and call. Both Rory Sue and I have the rare panda blood type. And at Gray Song's request, I served as Rory Sue's mobile blood bank for 8 years. "Aria Lynn, how dare you betray me?" He believed my lie without hesitation, while on the other end of the phone, my mother-in-law and father-in-law were crying and doubting. "It's impossible. Aria Lynn would never betray you." "Mom, Dad, how can you still take her side at a time like this? Don't you realize your son's been cuckolded?" Without waiting for the elderly couple to retort, Gray Song hung up the phone without hesitation. "I choose Rory Sue. Do whatever you want with Aria Lynn. Kill her or torture her. I don't care." The kidnappers dismantled the bomb as agreed and released Rory Sue. Gray Song thoughtfully draped his suit jacket over her and carried her in his arms. I watched them leave, leaving me alone to face the brutal kidnappers. But this time, my heart was as calm as still water. The kidnapper grinned maliciously, extended the timer on the bomb by another 60 seconds, and pressed the sharp blade against my neck, deliberately tormenting me. "Let's play a game. There are 3 wires, red, blue, and yellow. Only one can stop the countdown. You choose." I calmly chose blue. He smirked maliciously and turned to fetch the cutting tool. While the kidnapper was distracted, I leaped with the bomb, plummeting from the upper floors of the abandoned factory. I thought falling to the ground would be a quick end, better than being tortured to death. Unfortunately, the tremendous impact sent my body crashing through the roof of Gray Song's Bugatti, slamming hard into the driver's seat as blood instantly splattered across the windows. Gray Song, who was holding Rory Sue, turned pale at the sight, completely stunned. The police, who had been lying in ambush, froze for 3 seconds before springing into action. Gray Song looked at his beloved car stained with blood and said in disgust, "What bad luck. Couldn't you die farther away?" I did want to die farther away. Even playing the role of a human puppet for the kidnappers for a few minutes to achieve that. Who would have thought he'd still be flirting with Rory Sue, lingering without leaving? His good friend said, "Gray, how has Aria Lynn treated you all these years? She practically gave you her heart, and yet you only care about Rory Sue." Gray Song glared at him furiously. "What do you know? Aria Lynn just kept insisting the child she's carrying isn't mine. Why should I save her? You're defending her so fiercely. Could it be you've been sneaking around with her behind my back?" It's bad enough he's heartless toward me, but to even suspect his longtime best friend, his cold words cut deep. "Gray Song, I have a wife. Have you ever considered that Aria Lynn might have lied on purpose because she didn't want to put you in a difficult position? Even your own parents don't believe it. Haven't you ever doubted it?" Gray Song said nonchalantly. "Since she's not your wife, don't worry about it. I'm taking Rory to the hospital for a checkup. Lend me your car first." By this time, the fake bomb on me had been removed by the bomb disposal experts, but my injuries were severe and I urgently needed medical attention. His good friend said, "My sports car is fast. Let's take Aria Lynn first." Gray Song didn't even glance at me, snatched the car keys from his friend, and even threatened him. "Over these years, your Liu family has profited greatly by relying on the Song family. Don't force me to bankrupt you." Young Master Liu's face turned pale, looking at me covered in blood with pity. "One moment later, and Aria Lynn will die." Gray Song didn't care. If she dies, that's her fate. Let her wait for the ambulance. Out of consideration for his good friend, he smiled and said, "Aria Lynn is quite the actress. She doesn't deserve sympathy. If it weren't for her tricking my mother into helping her win the first prize in the designer competition, Rory Sue would be the chief designer now." After the competition, Rory told me that Aria Lynn's winning design was actually plagiarized from Rory Sue, a woman who would stop at nothing to climb the social ladder and has been scheming to marry into a wealthy family. Who knows, maybe she orchestrated the kidnapping herself. If I hadn't seen through her, Rory would be the victim now. It's just as well that Aria Lynn is dead. One less troublemaker in the world. He carried Rory Sue into the car and sped off in his sports car. I was pulled out of the car by the police, placed on the ground for emergency treatment, waiting for the ambulance. In my dazed state, I heard the roar of the sports car's engine and the commotion of the police arresting the kidnappers. The last glimmer of light in my eyes was finally replaced by darkness. I've loved Grey Song for 10 years. Our first meeting was at a fashion week. That day happened to be my mother-in-law's fashion show. Before marriage, I was her student, her most prized protégé at the Design Institute. As the models twirled in their dance skirts across the dazzling runway, Grey Song and I saw only each other. We fell in love, got matching tattoos on our ring fingers, a symbol of love that would never part. Until I saw Rory Sue's face, I realized how many similarities we had. Only then did I know that his white moonlight had returned. In my previous life, when I learned this truth, the despair of being betrayed by love overwhelmed me with grief. I confronted him while pregnant, demanding, "If you don't love me, why did you marry me?" He replied, "If it weren't for you being my mother's student and using that connection to climb the social ladder, the current Mrs. Song would definitely not be you." But I never forced him to marry me. He clearly acted so loving. Was it all just a lie? Since this life can start anew, I think giving up now isn't too late. It's just a pity for my unborn child, who never got to see this world, since I didn't just sit and wait for death like Rory Sue did. This time I managed to save my life. I weakly opened my eyes and could feel the steel plate in my leg and the support device around my waist. The doctor said, "Miss Lynn has multiple fractures and comminuted fractures all over her body. There are still 2 more surgeries ahead, but fortunately, she has survived." Truly blessed with great fortune, my mother-in-law burst into tears, saying, "As long as she's alive, that's all that matters," seeing me awake. My in-laws came forward together to show their concern. "When we find that wretched Grey Song, we'll definitely make him come and apologize to you." My voice was hoarse. "Teacher, don't say anything. I know the child you're carrying is the Song family's flesh and blood. You lied on purpose because you didn't want to put Grey in a difficult position." My mother-in-law choked up. "Silly child, you can tell me if you've been wronged." My mother-in-law's words rekindled my hope for life. Originally, I wanted to die, not because I was afraid Grey Song would be troubled. My mother-in-law took my hand and said, "Don't be sad, Aria. You can have another child in the future. I'll call Grey to come to the hospital right now." After the call, my mother-in-law scolded her son. But Grey Song didn't care at all. Not dead. What a pity. The good die young, while the wicked live 1,000 years. Maybe she orchestrated the kidnapping herself. I heard the kidnappers took $1 billion and were going to split it 50-50 with her. His words sent his mother-in-law's blood pressure soaring, and she shouted in fury, "You heartless brat. You saw Aria fall from that height with your own eyes. She suffered multiple fractures and broken bones, and you lost your child too. A miscarriage. Ha ha ha. Even better if it's true, it wasn't mine anyway." The mother-in-law was so angry her heart palpitated. "You bastard, I knew you wouldn't admit it." When the doctor removed the fetus, I specifically asked them to keep the umbilical cord blood for a paternity test. "It's definitely your child." This time, Grey Song didn't laugh. He finally turned serious. "Is it true? Was Aria Lynn really carrying my child?" The mother-in-law's face was full of sorrow. "As genuine as can be. But the child is already gone." Grey Song didn't believe it. She could fake a kidnapping case, so how could the child not be hers? "You all conspired with Aria Lynn to help her push Rory out, deliberately deceiving me, didn't you?" My mother-in-law looked at me with pity. "Come to the hospital to see Aria. She just lost her child and needs someone to care for her the most." Hearing that I needed care, Grey spoke indifferently. "Rory was frightened by the kidnapping and still has heart discomfort. Don't let Aria Lynn act anymore if she's really carrying my child. She should stay at home quietly and not stir up trouble everywhere." My mother-in-law wanted to say more, but Grey had already ended the call. My father-in-law was also furious. "Aria, we've spoiled Grey too much. When he comes home, I'll make him kneel in the ancestral hall to atone for his sins." With a sigh, my mother-in-law took my hand, intending to place the family heirloom bracelet on my wrist, only to realize it was fractured and still in a cast. "I'm sorry, Aria. You are my most accomplished student and my favorite daughter-in-law. That Rory Sue could never replace you. In this lifetime, I will only acknowledge you as my daughter-in-law. When Grey returns, We will all reprimand him properly. Can you forgive him for this matter? Whether in this life or the last, I never once considered forgiving Gray. The pain and shadows he brought me could never be mended, even if my life were to restart countless times. Teacher, do you know why I never call you Mom? Mother-in-law was stunned. I smiled faintly and palely, because you still see me as your daughter-in-law. If it were your own daughter who suffered such grievances, would you ask her to just let it go with a smile? Father-in-law explained, it was the kidnappers who were too vicious. Besides, the police were already in position at the time. My son wasn't the one who started it. I smiled bitterly in resignation, the pain in my heart beyond anyone's understanding. In the previous life, Rory Sue was left behind with a bomb strapped to her body. The police dared not approach, and the kidnappers took her to a desolate place. In the end, she was locked in a cabinet, tortured to death, and thrown into a river. As for me, I bore the brunt of Gray's wrath. Beaten beyond recognition and drowned alive. This time, faced with nothing but a fatal outcome, I chose to jump from a building. Surviving was merely an accident. You too can go to the police station and inquire about the details of this case, then you won't think the kidnapping has nothing to do with Gray. Both parents-in-law fell silent. I don't know what method my mother-in-law used again, but that very afternoon, Gray came to the hospital to see me. He sauntered in lazily, holding a bouquet of chrysanthemums, under the pretense of a visit, yet performing the act of mourning. So it turns out, no matter what choice I made, Gray had already hated me to the core. Not only was my expression unpleasant, but my mother-in-law's face looked even worse. What kind of flowers are these, child? Rory Sue suddenly appeared behind Gray, cautiously observing, why is Sister Aria unhappy? Is it because of me? I hadn't even said anything yet, but Gray was quick to defend. It was me who wanted to give you chrysanthemums. It has nothing to do with Rory. If you're unhappy, take it out on me. Stop always targeting her. I'm practically paralyzed now. What could I possibly do to them anyway? Furious, my father-in-law picked up an ashtray and hurled it at his shoulder. Damn brat. Don't you know Aria had a miscarriage? She can't even walk now, and you deliberately sent chrysanthemums to upset her. Gray, unconvinced, clutched his shoulder and retorted, Mom, Dad, how much did she pay you? Is it worth putting on this act with her? His mother-in-law was so furious she slapped him across the face. Our family is the wealthiest. Do we need to put on a show with Aria Lynn for money? He covered his face and sneered, that's just pouring the potion of delusion. I've grown up this much, and you've never hit me, Mom, especially you. If it weren't for Aria Lynn plagiarizing Rory Sue back then, she should be the chief designer now, and you actually defend Aria Lynn. Gray's face twisted, and his parents were so angry they clutched their chests, gasping for breath. That was my original work. I worked hard on it for 3 days and nights, and it was almost stolen by Rory Sue for the competition. If it weren't for the studio's surveillance footage as proof, I wouldn't be able to clear my name even if I jumped into the Yellow River. But whether Gray believes it or not, I don't care anymore. I asked my best friend to deliver the divorce papers. Sign it. I want a divorce. Gray read it and flew into a rage, throwing the folder in my face. Enough is enough. You've been putting on a show with my whole family, and now you want to take my child and divorce me. Not a chance. He even went as far as turning off my pain relief pump. Stop pretending to be sick. You fell from the factory, but you were still wearing a safety harness, weren't you? Just to get my attention, you orchestrated a kidnapping to frame Rory Sue. And now you're making a scene about divorce. What other tricks do you have up your sleeve? The moment the pain relief pump was turned off, the agony from my fractures intensified. My face instantly turned pale, and I winced in pain. My best friend shoved him aside and called for a doctor. The doctor was speechless and scolded. Speak properly. The patient is severely injured. The pain level isn't any lower than childbirth. Removing the pain pump is practically asking for her life. I was in so much pain that sweat beaded on my forehead and veins bulged. Gray blinked, still unconvinced. Aria Lynn, your acting is getting better and better. Disappointing. Disappointed. Extreme disappointment filled my heart as the shadow of being brutally beaten by Gray in my past life flashed through my mind. Trembling uncontrollably, I weakly cried out, divorce. Divorce. If it weren't for my best friend supporting me and giving me strength, I would have nearly fainted from anger. Let's divorce then. But the child of our Song family must be born into the Song family. I really wanted to curse at him. Can't he understand human language? The child is gone, gone. I asked my best friend to help lift the blanket, revealing an ugly scar on my stomach, 2 unfinished surgeries, and my legs swollen from shattered bones. The cruelty of reality was laid bare before him in this brutal manner. Staring at my flat stomach, his entire body trembled as he staggered back in disbelief. Impossible, impossible. My mother showed me the paternity test. That was clearly my child. I calmly said, your child is gone. Let's get a divorce. Rory Sue hid behind him, the corners of her lips curling upward, but she immediately composed herself when she met her mother-in-law's gaze. Gray frowned in confusion. Impossible. Did you jump from there on purpose to get rid of my child just to divorce me? Such a ridiculous explanation. Even he didn't believe it himself. I dare to go to such great lengths to avoid having children, which proves I stopped loving him long ago. So Gray was instantly caught in a dilemma, desperately hoping I would give him an answer. Nowadays, women have the right to choose whether to have children or not. There's no need for me to risk lifelong disability for something so trivial. Gray, you're so shrewd in business. Can't you grasp such simple logic, or have you used all your wits castrating your competitors, driving them to bankruptcy and ruin? Gray's expression stiffened for a moment. Only then did the father-in-law remember something. You once told me about making hundreds of millions in minutes. What exactly was that about? After the father-in-law retired early, he handed over the company entirely to Gray to manage. Gray's ruthless tactics came one after another, mercilessly cutting down competitors. This time we were kidnapped, all thanks to Gray. They say nothing is more ruthless than a real man. But Gray's ruthlessness in business is exceptionally vicious, engaging in rampant monopolies that leave investors groaning in distress. His evasive gaze and silence gave his father-in-law the answer: one should always leave room for others. The Song family's vast wealth and influence weren't meant for you to tarnish their virtue like this. You've nearly destroyed the reputation our ancestors worked so hard to build. Father-in-law gnashed his teeth, filled with deep regret. Gray raised his chin, refusing to admit he was wrong. This is exactly what Mom taught. If you're not ruthless, you won't secure your position. Mother-in-law glared. What did I teach you? How is this suddenly my fault? You shielded Aria Lynn in plagiarizing Rory Sue's design, resorting to any means to climb up. Those honors should have rightfully belonged to Rory Sue. I'm just following your example. Outrageous. The mother-in-law was furious. She had maintained a spotless reputation all her life, never tainted by scandal. This little wench whispers in your ear, and you believe her. For her sake, you dare slander even your wife and your own mother. Isn't that the truth? That was a design Rory Sue worked on for 3 days and nights. She even showed me her initial drafts. My voice is damaged, so my best friend speaks up for me. Where did she get the first draft? When Aria was drawing, I brought her coffee for 3 days. I still have the timestamps of the photos I took of her first draft on my phone. What's more, there are cameras in the studio. If young Master Song had just checked, he wouldn't have jumped to conclusions based on hearsay. Rory Sue instantly blushed, too embarrassed to argue back. See for yourself. The mother-in-law directly sent him the studio surveillance footage from that year. Glancing sideways at Rory Sue, I kept many backups precisely to prevent certain people from spreading rumors and causing trouble in the future. After Gray finished watching, although he still protected her, his expression clearly began to waver, even if that was Aria Lynn's original work. How do you explain her deliberately sending someone to secretly deliver an envelope to me, lying that Rory Sue was dead, just to marry me? So, the reason Gray fell in love with me at first sight was because I resembled his deceased white moonlight. I finally understand why he married me so readily. But I never sent him any letters. I didn't even know Rory Sue existed before she returned to the country. His father suddenly spoke up. Those were sent by me. Do you even know what she used to do? Dad, don't slander Rory. I've known her for years, and I know how kind-hearted she is. His mother sneered. Kind-hearted? At such a young age, she was already pulling scams with her uncle. if she hadn't met you, she would never have quit. It's just that the same seductive tricks she used to lure others are now being used on you. Rory Sue's prestigious academic credentials were also fabricated. Given her level of education, how dare she accuse Aria Lynn of plagiarizing her? She doesn't even have a basic understanding of design drafts. Rory Sue's true colors were completely exposed, leaving her face instantly pale and utterly humiliated. Gray looked at her in disbelief. Rory Sue, on the verge of tears, tugged at the sleeve of his suit jacket, desperate to explain. Gray, that's not how it is. I didn't want to be born into that kind of family either. She tried to make excuses, attempting to gain sympathy by playing the victim. This kind of hypocritical woman was all too familiar to her mother-in-law, who sneered, "It's not like you're the only one with a bad background. Aria grew up in an orphanage, yet she never resorted to dirty money-making schemes like you. I truly never expected that among the hundreds of impoverished students the Song family sponsored, there would be someone like you. Instead of using the money to study properly, you spent it all on designer clothes to snag rich men, and even set up honey traps." Rory Sue feigned heart discomfort, still attempting to evoke Gray's affection. Gray's anger flared slightly as he abruptly shook off her hand. "So you approached me just to treat me as your big client. Before, it was a quick scam for profit, and now you want a permanent solution." Rory Sue actually grabbed the fruit knife from the table, pressing it against her own neck, ready to resort to life-threatening coercion. She wept with pearly tears streaming down her face. "Why does everyone side with Aria Lynn? I just wanted a good life. Is that so wrong? Gray, it was you who swore you loved me back then. Yet the moment you heard I was dead, you turned around and married Aria Lynn, even got her pregnant with your child, who hasn't made mistakes in their youth. How dare you use my past faults to question my love for you?" Gray ignored her outright and walked to my hospital bedside. "Aria, it's all her fault for blinding me back then, thankfully. My parents opened my eyes, and I realized I'd misjudged her. All these years, you're the only one who truly loved me, and I've realized I still love you too. Please give me a chance to make it up to you. I may have a broken bone, but I'm not blind." The lipstick stain on his white shirt completely exposed his sweet talk. Rory Sue threw down the knife, quickly stepped up to him, and grabbed his collar in one swift motion, crying and angrily exposing him. "Just now in the car, you praised my lips for being beautiful, and deliberately had me leave a lipstick mark on your shirt. You said you wanted to infuriate Aria Lynn, that jealous woman. Gray, you don't love anyone, you only love yourself." Now his lies were completely exposed, and the chrysanthemums on the nightstand seemed all the more ironic. Gray looked flustered, his evasive eyes as if he didn't know what to do. "Aria, I didn't, she was the one who seduced me." "Shut up." I finally couldn't take it anymore. "If she seduced you, you took the bait. If she told you to die, why don't you go die?" "Gray, divorce." He looked at me pitifully, pleading, "Aria, give me another chance. Are you still angry with me because I didn't choose you during the kidnapping? You know how vicious that kidnapper was, but I called the police. In my previous life, if he hadn't recklessly called the police and caused a huge scene, the kidnapper wouldn't have been driven to torture Rory Sue to death in a fit of rage. This time, I narrowly escaped with my life, purely by luck. There is no sorrow greater than a heart that has turned cold." His words no longer stir any emotion within me. "My disappointment in you didn't accumulate in a single day. It built up over time, even without the kidnapping. I would have wanted a divorce." Gray, like a child who lost his candy, cried, "Aria, you can't leave me. You're still sick now. Our Song family has money. I'll hire the best doctors for you. You will definitely stand up again. I'll wait for you." "Money?" I sneered. "In your eyes, everyone approaches you for money. From the first time we met, you decided I was after your money. You pretended to be affectionate. But you were just using me as a substitute for Rory Sue. Now that she's right in front of you, you don't love her anymore." "Ha, Rory Sue was right. You only love yourself." Gray still blamed all the mistakes on Rory Sue. "No, it's all her fault. She deceived me." Rory Sue didn't back down either, loudly exposing their office affair and how Gray had scammed their peers. Unable to bear the disturbance, I asked my best friend to kick them both out. My in-laws cried and refused to leave. Wanting to stay and take care of me to make up for Gray's absence, I sighed helplessly. Please, I beg you, I just want some peace and quiet. I blocked all the song family members. With my best friend by my side, I finally completed the last 2 surgeries, but there was still a long road ahead for rehabilitation. I submitted the divorce application several times, but Gray firmly refused to agree, because I didn't want to see him. He had someone deliver roses every day. After all these years of marriage, he actually didn't know I was allergic to pollen. All the flowers ended up being thrown in the trash by my best friend. The pampered young master song simply doesn't know how to love someone. Right now, all I want is a divorce. Back and forth, Gray dragged it out for half a year. By the time I had already entered the rehabilitation phase, Gray still refused to sign. He kept using money to pressure the court. On the other hand, under the guise of love, he sent me flowers and gifts, performing what he called deep affection. Little did he know. The colleagues he had wronged in the business world were sending me razor blades daily as threats. The news about the previous kidnapping and the divorce announcement I released were all suppressed from trending by him using money. He seemed remorseful, but his domineering and aggressive nature showed no signs of restraint. Finally, when I felt I couldn't stay in the country any longer and was about to fly abroad with my best friend, Gray actually got into trouble. My mother-in-law called me, saying Rory Sue flew into a rage out of humiliation and stabbed Gray to death with a knife. But strangely, on the day of Gray's funeral, he suddenly woke up, and his previous wounds had vanished, but his personality had completely changed. The elderly couple were both overjoyed and heartbroken, urging me not to divorce, saying that Gray must have turned over a new leaf this time after waking up. I can't help but wonder, has Gray also been reborn? When he fell to his knees at the entrance of my hospital room, I finally became certain that he had indeed been reborn. Gray knew about the beatings he had inflicted on me, the harm he had done to me and our baby. At last, he understood the depth of my despair when faced with a choice where both paths led to death. Why I lied about the child not being his, and why I chose to leap from that high-rise. Gray was crying and confessing outside the door. Aria, I was wrong, it's all my fault. I really don't want a divorce. I've made countless mistakes in the past, but I've finally realized that you are the one I love most. You have to give me a chance to atone, so you can see that I've changed. Aria, please come out and see me. I sat in the wheelchair as my best friend pushed me to meet him. Half a year had passed, and he looked much more weathered, with stubble around his lips and eyes full of hope and pleading. He knelt and came to the side of my wheelchair. Aria, you finally agreed to see me. Amham, my gaze swept over him coldly, devoid of any past affection. He was overjoyed. Give me another chance. In this lifetime, I promised to be a worthy husband. I thought, through the kidnapping case, he must have realized I had been reborn, but it was all too late. Aria, can we not get divorced? I answered without hesitation. No. Gray remained kneeling, clutching the armrest of my wheelchair in repentance. Aria, I know everything now. Rory Sue secretly returned to the country, plotting to take your place. She sent the secrets of my underhanded dealings in the business world to that kidnapper, deliberately provoking him, which led to that incident. It was all her scheme. If I could go back to that day, I would still choose to save you first. So this was his repentance. So, you admit to your own underhanded dealings, admit to making enemies everywhere in the business world. Gray didn't expect that to be the point I cared about. He froze for a moment before saying, Aria, those were all work-related matters. Society is just a jungle where the strong prey on the weak. They were too incompetent themselves. Can't blame me for being ruthless. I laughed in exasperation. Young Master Song was born with a silver spoon in his mouth, so of course you can stand at the pinnacle and declare everyone else incompetent. Just like me. If I'd spent half a year dealing with an ordinary person, this divorce might have been finalized by now. After half a year of dealing with young Master Song, the divorce papers vanished into thin air, as if nothing had ever happened. I often feel powerless too. He suddenly took out the wind chime I once gave him. Its clear, melodious sound incredibly pleasing to the ear. Aria, do you remember, there was a time when my eyes were injured, covered with gauze. And you hung it by my bedside. You said, whenever I need you, just shake the wind chime. and you'll come to me right away." With tears streaming down his face, he said, "You used to love me so much. Have you forgotten all of it?" Yes, I once loved him, so I could tirelessly stand by his side. In the end, only I loved him. I took the wind chime from his hand and, without a hint of mercy, smashed it onto the ground. The porcelain shattered into pieces, scattering everywhere. It also completely terminated the timeline of our relationship. "Mr. Song, you'd better sign the divorce papers as soon as possible. Delaying it won't change my mind. Although I don't want a peaceful parting, I also don't want to completely tear apart all pretense of cordiality. After all, my teacher and father-in-law are reasonable people. They just spoiled their only son too much." I turned my wheelchair and returned to the hospital room, refusing to see him from then on, through the peephole. My best friend saw Gray apologizing while slapping himself. I sat on the windowsill basking in the sunlight and calmly replied, "No need to pity him." Before long, a crowd had gathered in the corridor outside the rehabilitation department. Neither the kidnapping nor the divorce had made headlines, but the gossip about the eldest son of the Song family kneeling outside his wife's hospital room and slapping himself in apology shot to the top of the trending list within 5 minutes. The whole internet praises him as the perfect husband, with posts about the devoted and domineering CEO flooding everywhere. Only I know the truth. His dominance and brutality are all too real, without any romantic novel filter. I will never forget how he kicked me while I was pregnant, causing severe bleeding, and the miserable life I endured with a colostomy bag. I must take this gamble. Even if it doesn't work domestically, I'll go abroad to uncover every suppressed scandal about him, one by one. I contacted the journalist again to release the news about the kidnapping and divorce. I thought Gray, Reborn, had truly repented, but who would have guessed that this exposé would once again vanish without a trace? Only his posts portraying him as a devoted lover remained at the top of the charts on major platforms. The comment section showed only one side of the coin, overwhelmingly urging me to forgive him, saying such a devoted, handsome, and wealthy man was a rare find. I've truly witnessed the Song family's wealth and power. They've even blocked all channels for me to speak the truth. He's clearly trying to use public opinion to morally pressure me into forgiving him. Finally, on the 3rd day of his apologies outside Gray's hospital room, I called my mother-in-law. "Teacher, I'll reconsider the divorce matter. Please persuade him to stop coming every day. I've already received his apologies." I pretended to compromise, which finally gave me the chance to escape abroad with my best friend. This time, I finally have a platform to speak out. I've revealed everything. The details of the kidnapping case from the beginning to the end, as well as the divorce. Many companies that had been victimized by Gray seized the momentum and helped spread the story back home. Finally, after several obstacles, these matters spread out. Netizens who once envied my devoted and domineering husband now sympathize with me just as much. The comments are once again overwhelmingly criticizing him. It's all a fake persona of deep affection, taking advantage of his family's wealth to not even let her divorce. No wonder scumbags like trashy women. Just let him be tied to Rory Sue forever. Guess what folks don't know yet? Rory Sue, love-struck and rejected, stabbed the young master of the Song family to death, and then the young master's corpse reanimated at his own funeral. Seems like it's been scrubbed from the trending topics too. TSK, the upper class sure has plenty of jokes. I'm a novelist. What if the young master Song was reborn during his funeral, had an overnight epiphany, and rushed to his wife's hospital room to repent? I couldn't take on the Song family alone, so I had to rely on public opinion. The Song family wasn't powerful enough to cover the sky with one hand, and soon the relevant authorities above took notice of him. Inviting Gray for a tea session, the Song group was suspected of illegal monopolistic practices, paid a hefty fine, and only then was he released. Gray had no choice but to compromise. Confined within the country and unaware of my new phone number, he could only reach me via email. Aria Lynn, I agree to the divorce. Please stop leaking information on foreign platforms. Send me the address, and I'll mail the divorce agreement to you. Of course I wouldn't give him my address. Who knows if young Master Song would seek revenge on me? I've already signed. Once you've signed yours, just fax it over. No need to trouble yourself, my cold reply made Gray ask, Arya, are you really that afraid of me? I've truly changed, I won't treat you the way I did before. Is it really so hard to leave me away to contact you? Upon receiving the facts of the divorce agreement, I stopped responding to his messages, for the time being. My best friend and I chose to live abroad. With news brought to us by friends from home, it was said that Rory Sue was convicted of intentional homicide and, not long after entering prison, was found to be pregnant. She even tried to use the child as leverage against the Song family to secure her release on bail. Gray, however, chose the most extreme method. Taking advantage of Rory Sue's medical parole, he stabbed Rory Sue in the stomach with a knife, delivering 17 fierce blows. As revenge for Rory Sue having stabbed him before, the adult and child died on the spot. Gray, driving a sports car, still believed he could escape legal punishment by relying on the Song family's influence. The elderly couple of the Song family were reasonable and showed no favoritism. My former mother-in-law. Now I only address her as teacher. The teacher stood before the media, weeping with regret. Our Song family has no such beast of a son. We, the old couple, have been kind to others all our lives, and it took generations of effort for the Song group to become an industry leader. The police have caught him. Please handle the case with confidence. We will absolutely not interfere with the sentencing. Gray went from being a carefree rich kid to a fugitive criminal. Seeing even his own parents abandon him, he came to the riverbank where he had pushed me off in his previous life. After lamenting the unpredictability of life, he got back into his car, stepped on the gas, and drove straight into the river. I learned of Gray's death a month later. That day, I was finally able to stand up and walk again, and my best friend and I were celebrating at a restaurant. Would I feel sorry for Gray's death? When I recall the extreme suffering I endured, I feel that his departure is something I should be grateful for. Only when he stops causing trouble will I dare to return to my country.